All right, I'm about to get started here. So we have a lot to cover, so I'll start a tiny bit early. So thanks for coming. I'm assuming you guys all use Excel or your organizations use Excel. And we have lots of good information here. First, I'm going to start off by asking if anyone is aware of this thing called Spreadsheet Inquire. Anyone? How about Spreadsheet Compare? All right. For all you guys who raise your hands, I have some notebooks. I have a couple t-shirts up here. Unfortunately, they're all mediums, but you're welcome to them. Who said they use Spreadsheet Compare? I'll let you guys take one of these. Medium t-shirt, anybody?
Medium is like a new medium.
I can switch for a t-shirt.
T-shirt? Okay. Do you want to pass it? Oh, a t-shirt? Take those and pass them out. All right, now my back won't hurt so much walking around here. Okay, so one thing I'd like to start off with is just talking about Excel as a programming language. I mean, we all know Excel as the desktop application. People love to put their data in, but when you really look at it, it's a programming language. You know, as soon as you start using functions, it's a programming language. And we know there's a lot of other things in there like charting, you know, all the BI features. There's just so much to Excel. And it's very approachable also. So people just think, okay, I'll use this desktop app. I can start doing some cool stuff. And they don't realize they're programming, but they are. And what that causes is what we call EUCs, or end user computing applications. So these are created by end users, not by IT. You're not following development practices. They're homegrown. They're just, you know, very little documentation oftentimes. I think you get the picture. And really, if you think about it, a lot of applications, of course, have code and data, but I think they're rarely woven together the way they are in Excel, right? Because you have your data and your formulas and functions just sitting right together in a sheet. Sometimes you even have data built into the functions, right? So, and they're critical to the business. Now, I'll talk about some of the usage of spreadsheets. I think this is not going to be shocking to anybody, but there's been a lot of research done on the use of spreadsheets, and 95% of US firms were found to use spreadsheets for financial reporting, and 90% of all analysts were using spreadsheets to do calculations. And there's also been a lot of studies done on error rates in spreadsheets, and rather than cite any individual one of those, somebody actually went through and did this work for me. They looked at all the various studies on errors, and they said, well, we're just finding errors in abundance. Okay, so again, I don't think it's really huge news. If you want to find some interesting stories, there's a page on this website, usprig.org, which is the European Spreadsheet Risk Interest Group, where they just have a whole bunch of horror stories, and they're adding on there all the time because we keep hearing things happen. And we all know it's caused by us, right? This is actually my desk at work. One of my friends brought his dog in. He thought he would do a better job than I would. So, all right. So I'm going to get to a demo here. I just wanted to point out there, like a lot of times a spreadsheet will look real nice, but you really don't know what you can trust in there. There's some hidden things in there. So in Office, since Office 2013, we've added a whole bunch of features to help you manage spreadsheets and try to reduce the risk of all these errors and complexities and the homegrown nature of things. So I'll just talk quickly about these and get into a demo. So in the cloud, what we have is a smart way that you can do searching. So if your files are in SharePoint Online, SharePoint Online Search actually indexes the Excel files not just for words and things like that, but it actually understands the structure of the spreadsheet. So I'll show a little bit of demo on that, but basically you can search for things like the spreadsheets that have greater than 50,000 formulas, or spreadsheets that have lots of links or data connections and things like that. Here where I say server, I mean on-premises server. So we have a server that is actually like Big Brother, and I'm going to show how this works. That's Audit and Control Management Server, and what that does is it actually will just monitor for changes in spreadsheets. So essentially you're putting your spreadsheets under change control, and you get a detailed listing of basically every change that was made within the spreadsheet, and I'll show that. We have discovery and risk assessment, which is a tool that you can use to scan your organization, and it'll find all the spreadsheets that are out there, and it'll classify them as far as their risk. So you can put in criteria, but essentially you get an inventory, and you'll get high, medium, and low risk, and it lets you really go in and focus on the ones that are considered high risk. And again, it's based on structural things within the workbooks, like the number of formulas, the number of pivot tables, the number of complex formulas like nested ifs and things like that. And then we also have some features right on the desktop. A few of you were aware of Spreadsheet Compare. Spreadsheet Compare there in the middle was something we added in Office 2013, and it's simply the ability to compare two spreadsheets. So I'll be showing that. Spreadsheet Inquire is an add-in for Excel, but it's actually shipped with Excel if you have Pro Plus. And it helps you analyze a workbook that you have open and find out a lot of information about it, which is one of the key things, is just understanding how your spreadsheets work. So I'll show that as well. So now on to the demo. Okay. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to start out showing you, and this is not showing up too great on there, is Spreadsheet Inquire. And I'm skipping over a lot because I only have 20 minutes here, but assume that you've done the work of using that discovery and risk assessment tool that I talked about, and you understand which spreadsheets you need to actually put under some kind of controls. Spreadsheet Inquire is something that you would then use to help make sure you understand the spreadsheet, and you can use it for documentation, finding errors, and things like that. So this first thing I'm showing you is what we call a workbook relationship diagram. So actually, you know what? I need to back up 1 second and show you how to get this thing turned on. So Spreadsheet Inquire, like I said, is an add-in. You see this tab up here called Inquire. The way that you get that, again, if you have Pro Plus, it's included, it's installed by default, but it's not turned on. So you just need to come to your COM add-ins and just check the box that says Inquire, and you'll have it. It just shows up. So if you want to deploy this, if you're somebody in the IT org, you can actually, I guess, set a group policy to have this turned on by default. So sorry about missing that. So back to this diagram. So the workbook relationship diagram is if you want to take a look at all the external links that you have in a workbook. So I really hate using external links, so you don't get this kind of spider web of dependencies around your organization, but I've seen some incredibly complex linkages between workbooks where this whole diagram was just green and filled with tiny little dots for icons. Well, let me explain what we're seeing here. This icon here on the left is the workbook I have open, so it's just showing me all the data that's coming into it from all these other sources. So you see an icon here for each workbook that it's linked to, or it's pulling data from. And you can get some more info just by hovering over that. So we can see, like, for example, this workbook up here is an interesting one. It says it's a missing one, and if you look at the path of it, it's talking about somebody's desktop. So it looks like a SharePoint location, but actually it has the word desktop in there. And if you know how Excel stores the links to other files, it doesn't actually store the whole path. It'll store whatever it needs and assume that the file might be in the same folder of the open file. And in this case, it's thinking that one's actually supposed to be in a folder on somebody's desktop. Of course, that happens a lot because people copy and paste things and they don't realize they create a link, but they may have a file like they opened it from an email, they copy and paste something, all of a sudden there's a link to a file that says temporary internet files, and it's really, it's going to be a broken link in almost every case except for that one time when they first created it. Another thing you can see here, this one icon that's shown in yellow is interesting. This gives you the indication that the data may be out of date. So a lot of people think that if you have linked workbooks and you update one of the upstream workbooks, that the data is magically going to flow down and end up wherever it needs to go. That's not really the case with Excel, right? You're working, if I make a change in this file over here, I save it, that's fine, but there's nothing to tell this file here shown in yellow that it needs to open up and get that data, right? So you actually, by looking at this, could say you need to open up this file and just refresh it and then save it, and then you'll need to go to this file and refresh and save it, and then finally the file that I have open would get the most current data. So this is just a really nice check for people that have linked workbooks, that they can go in and make sure their data is up to date, make sure they know where all the links are, make sure nothing's broken. And it also shows you data connections out to other sources. So we have data coming from a website and data coming from a database here. It could be a SQL database, Access database. They'll all show up there. Okay, I'm going to switch to a different one here and show there's another really cool tool we have called the workbook analysis. And again, this is really for probably the spreadsheet owner to take advantage of, and this helps them to understand what's going on and find problems, things like that. All you do is click this button up here, and it automatically analyzes the whole workbook, and it has a list of categories of things you can look at here, so I'll just choose a few. So for example, I can find formulas with errors, so I don't have to hunt and peck around the workbook. I just click on that, and then over here I have a list of all the formulas that have errors, and I can double click, and it took me right to the cell over here that has the error, so I can go then and fix it. Unfortunately, it's not a magic bullet that can tell me what I did wrong or tell me what I should do, but it at least helps me find things. So another couple things to look at, like for example, I like to look at negative formulas. Negative formulas are simply formulas where the first character after the equal sign is a minus sign. And it's just something that it's an easy typo to make because the keyboard, the keys are right next to each other. And it's, of course, going to have a huge impact on the outcome of those. So it's a good thing to just review all those and make sure they're really supposed to be negative. We can look at inconsistent formulas. So Excel already shows us the little green triangle telling us that we may have a series of formulas that are copied down from above. And if there's one in the middle that's changed, that's inconsistent, again, you don't have to hunt and peck around your workbook. You just get a list of those right here. And I'll show just one other thing. We look for invisible cells. So if the foreground color is the same as, or I'm sorry, the font color is the same as the background color, it's invisible really. So we'll find all those and again give you a list of that. So you can go in and say, well, why is this, and make sure things are good. So there's about 50 or so categories there. You can just hover your mouse over any one and it'll give you the definition of what it is. And it's just a lot of great information. You can actually export all this to another workbook and that becomes documentation of what you're doing there. Okay. So we have some other diagrams. I don't really have time to go through these, but there's a diagram that shows relationships between the sheets in the workbook. And one of the ways that that's really useful is if you say you want to delete a worksheet, you want to just make sure that there's no other formulas anywhere in the workbook referring to something on that sheet. And you can just run this diagram and see, okay, and have assurance that there's nothing that you're deleting that's going to cause a reference error. There's also a cell diagram, so you can pick out a specific cell and see the precedence and dependence of that cell. So it's nice if you have one with an error and you want to trace and find out maybe where the error originated, you can do that pretty easily through there. Okay, so that's all I'm about to show for Spreadsheet Inquire. There's a lot more information online, and now I'm going to move on and show the change control things that we have. So I mentioned that server, so we have this thing called Audit and Control Management Server, and it's set up in this case to monitor this file, and the way it works is it just basically monitors folders that are either on your network or on your on-premises SharePoint, and the user doesn't have to do anything. So what I'm showing here, imagine that I'm just the owner of the spreadsheet and I'm doing my daily job. I just go into Excel, and to illustrate the power of this, I'm just going to make a variety of changes here. So the first thing is I have these cells have these little green tick marks. I want to see what that is, and it tells me they're unprotected formulas. So I'm just going to lock those, and actually I think there's a whole bunch of them here, so I'll just go through and lock all these at once. And the reason I'm doing this is just show you that the tool actually tracks different types of changes, and it categorizes the types of changes. So it makes it really easy to look at all the differences between these files. So I've locked some cells. Now I'm going to go and make what I call a structural change, which is inserting a row. So I insert that row there, and I'm going to add a new product onto my list. Control D copies down. That may be a handy shortcut if anyone doesn't know it. And I'll just change this one. Now I'll change a formula. So I just have a hard-coded value in this formula. Again, my data woven together with my application. And then I happen to have some macros in here, so I'll go in here and make a quick change to my VBA. Again, I'm just making a one-character change, so it shows the power of this thing. So I've done everything. Okay, last thing is data entry. So I just have a button here. It changes all the values here, so my demo goes kind of quick. So remember, I'm just the owner of the spreadsheet doing my work. I don't need to know about change control. I don't care about it. I don't want to know about the server. I just do my work and save the file. So what happens when I save the file is that the server says, ooh, I see a change here. And I'm going to switch over and show how we present that data. So this is our Audit and Control Management Server web page, and it's really simple. Again, if the user wants to find out the change history for their file, they can do it, and this is what they would look at. And here's a list of all the files, so the user would see just what they have permission to. In this case, the file that I just worked on is at the top because it shows it in order of most recently processed or recently saved. And now this file is on a network share, so this system actually keeps a version history for it, even if there's no versioning turned on for that network share. If it's stored in SharePoint, then SharePoint does the versioning, and this tool will just do the change history part of it. But you can see for this one all the different version numbers. It gets the date and time, the username, and then we have statistics about all the changes that happened in there. So if I look over here, I can see there were a total of 59 changes in this last version. One formula change, and if I want to see that, I just drill down by clicking on it. So I can see here the old version of the formula and the new one, and it's just, I changed that number there from 270 to 260. It tells me it's a formula change. I'll go back. Let's just look at all the changes in there. So I have a lot of those data entry changes. A lot of times that's not interesting, so you can actually set the system to not track value changes, and it'll just track important things like structural changes, formula changes, VBA, and things like that. So I'll go down and show, we have the formatting change here is where I change the cells from unlocked to locked. And then down here is my VBA. And here, you can't see what change I made in the code, so you can drill in again. You simply click and then it should happen. There it goes. It's actually going to give me the one line where there was a change. The red is the old and the yellow is the new, so it's really simple to find even one character change in there. And then finally, I'm going to show you Spreadsheet Compare, which I think is probably the easiest to use and the most powerful of all these features. And I'm going to do that by opening up a previous version of this file. So again, with this system, it's not just tracking, it's actually keeping the version history for you. So I can say I want to download version 40. And then I can open it up, so I'll have the current version and version 40 open at the same time in Excel. That's really handy. You can also do this. Oh, it's opening into this one. Sorry about that. Let me close this guy. Sorry. So if you're in SharePoint, I don't know if you've seen the little clock icon over on the upper right of your thing where you can go to the version history of SharePoint right in Excel and open those up. Then you can compare the versions right there, or in this case, it's from a network share, and I'm opening up the current version again on here. So now I have the current version and the one I got from the version history. You can simply hit Compare Files. This is an application that's actually also on your Start menu, so you can either get to it from the Inquire tab, or you can just go to Start and hit Spreadsheet Inquire. I'm sorry, Spreadsheet Compare. And here you can compare any workbooks that you have open. In this case, I have version 40 and the current version, and it's just a matter of hitting compare. If there's any unsaved changes in there, it would give you the chance to save that before you do the comparison, because it's actually comparing what's the most recently saved item. And then here you get a list of all the differences, similar to what I just showed on that ACM website, showing all the change history, but here it's presented. The list of differences is here, and we see the old work, or version 40 here, and the current workbook here, and then we see the categories of changes here, which is really nice because then you can filter extremely easily. So imagine, if you think about all your workbooks, generally there's a lot of data getting changed in there, and it's probably either overwhelming to try to compare all the changes in data entry. I have experience with one customer where every time somebody used the workbook, it changed like 6 million values. So we don't need to look at these ones that are in green, so you can just turn those off. The ones that are in aqua color here are actually what we call calculated values. So those are where the value changed, but there's actually a formula in the cell. So again, I just don't want to look at all that. I want to see if anybody changed the way that my workbook actually behaves and works. So now I've filtered out all that noise, and I just get the structural change. So we can see there's an added row, and that's when I inserted that one row. We can see the formula change that I showed you also on the website. We see the cells that I changed from unlocked to locked, and we see the VBA code change. And again, you can drill through here and just double click to find the one character change in there. And I'm at time. I'm happy to meet with you guys off to the side. I think somebody else may be coming on here and answer any questions you have. I have a lot more information in the PowerPoint deck, so if you want to get a lot more information and find this content after the conference, I have resources to find out about all these products in detail, and I'll be happy to also give you my contact info if you have questions we can get together. So thanks for coming.